Okay, thanks, Marshall. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year 2023. Hope everyone had a great holiday. This is our first Q&A of the year, January 4th, and we will go ahead and get started. Just kind of a heads up, right now it's not too bad, but we've been getting all these severe weather warnings for the Sacramento Valley. I'm not sure about the rest of the state. We're supposed to get up to 4 inches of rain today and tomorrow with high winds up to 70 miles an hour. So if I freeze all of a sudden, hopefully one of my coworkers can take over for you. So hopefully our power keeps going. So back to CALPADS. The fall one final deadline is now underway, and it is January 20th. At that point, you'll want your Lea and CELPA approval to be required. Now, there was a flash 246 that went out, I think it was last week, so a lot of you may not have seen the communication, but it does talk about the errors that were converted, the special education errors that were fatal, that were converted to warnings, and now they are converted back to fatals. So you do want to look at that flash and just make sure you understand that if you have fatal errors, if you look at your revised uncertified and there's fatal errors, you are expected to go in and fix those errors. And once all your errors are fixed, then you could deapprove and then reapprove your revised uncertified versions. So that way you can be sure that your reports are accurate. And as part of the certification, fall 2 is now underway. So now you can look at the fall 2 reports and your certification statuses for fall 2 and your errors related to fall 2. Of course, recommend getting your fall 1 completed as soon as possible too. I think that's really all I had to say. We are unfortunately logging some new issues, so you do want to check out the known issues list. There's a couple issues that were logged today. One was related around the special education 51 or 591 F1 error. So do take a look at those. Those are high priority issues, so we hope to get those fixed as soon as possible. Also, there was a cert 104 error. Other than that, Martha, Angela, did you have anything you wanted to add today?
Yeah, thanks for covering the known issues, Gary. That we're starting off fall 2 with a major bug, cert 104. So we are aware you don't need to submit a ticket for that one. We've already logged it. Also, just wanted to remind folks that the quarterly meetings were scheduled for this week, but Brandy realized that a lot of folks are still on vacation, and so she bumped it out to next week. So I'll pop the link to that in the chat with those dates. That's all, Gary.
Okay. I'm going to get the chat window going here. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first question, I got some weird things on my screen here. Here we go. First questions from Asha. Are the questions or CTE survey remaining the same as last year? Also, when is CTE survey due? Are the questions or CTE survey remaining?
They're the same this year.
Okay, they are the same. And when are they due? Isn't it for end of year or?
Fall 2 has one.
CTE is for fall 2, and it's 6 months after they graduate that you survey them. So depending on when your graduation was, if it was the middle of June, 6 months after that is when you issue the survey for those students that actually completed.
Okay. Question 1 from Dominic. Happy New Year and welcome back. Are LEAs required to decertify and recertify? For example, if one of our small LEAs that only had 8 SPED students check the revised uncertified report and nothing has changed, do they still have to decertify, or can we move forward with a CELPA approval? So if you do look at your revised uncertified and there's no new errors, in some cases folks did go back and fix their warnings so that they wouldn't have them. Well, if you didn't have any errors and you still don't have any errors, you should be fine.
However, we had a bug on the report 16.3 that wasn't counting folks. And so Angela and I were talking about this earlier today. It's a nightmare for us on the service desk to look at and see and determine, oh, well, they were in this category, so they don't need to disapprove. It makes our life a lot easier if everybody just disapproves and uses the most recent revision. There's only about 100 LEAs that had 0 fatals prior to us turning them into warnings. So on the one hand, those 100 would be safe, but I don't know, it just makes it harder for us to track down who should get a new revision and who shouldn't. And if we just ask everybody to use a more recent revision, it makes our job easier in helping you guys be successful. So that's a long answer to your short question, Dominic. I mean, if somebody wants to argue, no, my November, 15th revision is good and I don't want to have to do anything, then we'll double check it. And yeah, okay, we agree. And then that's that one off. But when we're looking at 2,000 LEAs and trying to determine who hasn't yet done their disapproval, it just makes it really hard. But if we know everybody's going to have a January revision that they approve, it makes it so much easier for us. So.
Okay. Next question is from Vanessa. How to calculate staff years, LEA, and staff years total? So the staff years at the LEA would be the time that the staff is at your LEA. Staff years total would be if they came from another LEA. So let's say they were 10 years at a previous LEA and they came to your LEA and they've been with you for 2 years, and now that this is the 3rd year they're here. So you add 1 year to this total years, so they would now have 11 years, and then you would add 1 year to your staff service at your LEA.
And I think some SIS vendors may do that calculation for you, Vanessa. So you may want to ask your SIS vendor how they do it.
Okay. Sean says they just got their power back in Humboldt County. So from what I understand, well, that's a little bit higher, but from what I understand, most of the R weather is coming from the Bay Area. Should be any time now. From Robin, question 1, for fall 2, will we be doing the same CTE completer survey as last year? And yes, so we already answered that question. Question 1 from Wendy, any reason that CALPADS is insanely slow in posting today? Same old reasons, I guess. I know I was just trying to bring up reports and they were taking forever. And then all of a sudden they start popping up left and right and then they get slow again. So it's just something in how the processing handles in the backside. At 3:03, Kyron posted staff service years documentation. Thanks, Kyron. And at 3:04, Angela posted the link to the quarterly meetings. Question 1 from Colleen. Our student information system notified us that they are developing functionality for CALPADS to opt out of CAL Grant GPA submissions. Does this have anything to do with CALPADS? They are listed in the CALPADS section of their newsletter, but I haven't heard anything about it. Thanks. I don't know.
It sounds vaguely familiar, and we've talked about it, I think, in previous Q&As, that I don't know if CALPADS is going to be collecting this, but wasn't there a legislation that all students had to apply? Anybody remember?
Brandy's on.
Yeah. Hello, guys. Okay, so the question was, what was the question again, Gary? I heard you say CAL Grant, but
yeah, developing functionality for students to opt out of CAL Grant GPA submissions. Does this have anything to do with CALPADS? Student information systems are developing functionality to do that.
No, this does not have anything to do with CALPADS right now. Potentially for cradle to career, it might, but we are way far away from that right now.
So CALPADS isn't going to collect this information or use it at all, but the SIS vendors need to collect it because the LEAs have to report it, Brandy? Is that how that works?
For CAL Grants,
yeah.
You know what, I wish I could tell you. I do not know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Okay. We may want to add that to our quarterly.
Yes. Well, if I find out the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
I think Paula knows the answer. I just forgot what she told us the last time.
Okay. I know she talked about FAFSA, but
You're right.
I think it was FAFSA. I don't think it was related to CAL grants, but it may be correlated.
All right, question 1 from Leilani. We have a few special ed fatal errors for students that are missing an end date for special ed record from the prior school district. We cannot add the end date to the record, and the other school districts have not added them, even with us emailing them. How can I fix this? So I know we try to get a hold of the contact. Sometimes if you put a ticket in, we'll try to contact the other district as well.
I think there's an interim step there, Gary. If the school or district isn't replying, I would try the CELPA first. And Alex, are you driving today? Or is that Paul?
Not me.
It's still Marshall's screen.
Oh. Well, in that case, I guess I'll start sharing my screen.
We're all a little discombobulated with our holidays. If you go to the CSIS FICMAT page, we have the CELPA's contacts listed under the Find LEA contacts.
But I thought also that there was a flash that did say that you as an LEA, if you can't get the other LEA to do the exit, that you as the current LEA can add an exit to them. Isn't that one of our flashes, Joe?
Yeah, I think it covers relatedly with CALPADS Flash 246, I believe.
Much earlier, like in the beginning, we had that problem.
Well, we had those Cert 132 problems, if that is the issue. Yeah, there were some issue previous flash about it too.
Although I did log an error today in the 16.3 and 16.6 report, even if the students are exited from previous years, they're still showing up on the report. So hopefully we get that fixed soon.
Haven't we seen that before, Gary?
It seems like on all the reports. I know there's another PM one or a ticket for the 1.1 and 1.2 for special ed students that have exited in previous years that are still counting as SWD on the reports. Just keep coming back.
If you go to the homepage, Paul.
Yeah, click on CSIS there.
It's got its own bubble at the bottom, the far left. Find a CALPADS LEA contacts. There you go. And type in the CELPA names and they pop up down there. Fun fact, that's our most hit site on our website. most used.
Oh, just a clarification. I believe it's CALPADS Flash 244. That was kind of related to like if you could adopt and exit it yourself, in case the previous LEA does not respond accordingly.
244 is pretty recent. I thought it was an older one, but okay, we must have repeated
maybe
ourselves.
They repeated it, yeah, maybe.
Probably could repeat it again because I had already forgotten about it.
I know.
I didn't know you could edit other people's SPED records.
It's not that you're editing it, you're adopting it to exit it.
Oh, right. Okay, that's coming back to me now.
At 3:07, Karen posted the Fall 2 reporting map and submission checklist. And at 3:08, Rebecca posted a link to the CTE survey information that Brandy presented last year. Thanks, Rebecca.
And just so you guys know, that originally on a Q&A several weeks ago, I told you that webinar was going to be done and that it would be recorded and we would be posting it. And what I didn't realize is that the CTE office wanted to record it without it being a webinar and post it, which I'm not sure why they decided to do it like that. But essentially, we did record the webinar. It's virtually the same as last year, except the reports that you use to find your completers in CALPADS, if that's what you are using to find your CTE completers. Those reports have changed. Obviously, I believe it's 319 and 320 that you need to look at for your completers this year. But it's essentially the same as last year. He hasn't posted it because it has to be transcribed. And I'm assuming he hasn't done that yet. So it's taking a lot longer than it should. So sorry about that.
Okay. Question one from Nelisa. Is Brandy still part of the Q&A sessions? Well, she is today.
Yes, but you can't ask me anything but sped questions.
We get billed separately for any other
Right,
non-sped
exactly.
questions.
Question one from Alex. Where can we subscribe for the flash update emails? Is that the CSIS listserv?
DE automatically puts you on, if you're the LEA admin, you're put on the LEA admin listserv. But on CDE's website, they have right there, there's a link that says listservs. That's how you subscribe if you're not the LEA admin to get flashes.
Kyron posted the link to get to that at 3:10 as well.
Oh, great. And then Mahia asks the same question. Doug Hawkins says, I believe Flash 246 states that all revisions dated 12/20/22 are obsolete and LAs must take action. Question one from Terry. We have a special ed student that came from another district and were not aware of an IEP until this year, 3 years later. The student is enrolled with us as of 8/18, but not notified about the initial evaluation until 11/17. I put the student as a no-show and entered a new enrollment date, 11/17, in order to resolve this error. We will lose the student count. Is there another way we can address this error without losing the student?
Send up a pending record. So Terry, even though if the student was initially evaluated on 11/17, if you send up a pending record, it'll at least have, you'll at least have a record that overlaps census day.
Is it too late to adopt the previous IEP 3 years ago?
Well, what's confusing about it is she's saying initial evaluation. So if this is an initial evaluation, then there wasn't a previous one. Now, if it's a triennial, that's a whole different issue. So you may want to clarify, Terry, whether this is a triennial or if it's an initial evaluation.
At 3:11, Rebecca posted, yes, LEAs need to collect opt-out of completing the FAFSA. This was part of AB 469. Question one from Laura. If a SDC or RSP teacher has classes and handles the IEP meetings, do we report them with 2 job assignments and split their FTE?
So I'm assuming you're referencing the new code that the non-classroom based or support assignment code that is for special education case manager. And if that is part of their responsibility and they manage caseload, then you could split out part of their assignment with that new code. And I think it's like 6029. I can't remember. It's one of the new codes in the non-classroom based or support assignment code set. But yeah, you could. So you could report one course assignment and then a non-classroom based or support assignment of special education case manager.
Okay. Question one from Natasha. Per the documentation for SAS, pre-K SPED teachers, reporting is optional, and our district would prefer not to report them this year. However, because we have previously reported them, they have open demographic records and come up as a CERT 84 error. How can we unreport them for the 22-23 year?
You have to exit their employment end date, put an employment end date in. And just a heads up on that, there's a tip, because if you're doing that in online maintenance, there's an effective end date at the top of the screen, but if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, there's an employment end date, and that's the date you need to populate.
Yes. Don't put the expected one in. That just causes more problems. Question 1 from Sylvia. A student has a previous IFSP in CALPADS, now enrolled in our district and over 3 years old. Staff considers the assessment for SPED eligibility is not needed. How should we submit the exit from SPED to the student? By the 3rd birthday?
Joe, this is Brian Markentel's scenario. The one that we said, it's so rare. So right now there are a couple of exit codes that you could use. And I believe one of them is on the IFSP record, you could exit as not eligible, or parent withdrawal was the other one.
It's the C2B.
Oh, C2B, no parental consent for C2B transition.
Right. I think it's code 84, and the one that you mentioned about not eligible anymore is code 70 for the IFSP exit.
Right.
Is this cert 135? That's a warning. Do you call, Brandy?
I don't remember if it's a warning or not.
Well, it is. Cert 135 is a warning, but is this the one that you?
So, well, this is that it occurred late, and I believe part of this validation basically says there hasn't been a Part B evaluation. But I think that this excludes those students exited as ineligible, I believe. Because if you use the no parental consent for Part C to B, then the system does not expect a Part B record, right? And so, yes, this is a warning. This cert error would go away if you use that no parental consent from Part C to Part B.
That's in addition to that no longer eligible as well, Randy, as an umbrella code 70.
Okay.
Okay. Follow up to question 1 from Laura White. Brandy said I could, so I assume that means it is not necessary. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the question was. Oh, if SVC or RSP teacher has classes and handles IEP to report both. Okay.
Yeah, you could. I just keep in mind that for purposes of Fall 2, whatever you submit up to the system as part of their assignment gets evaluated by CTC for assignment monitoring purposes. So just keep that in mind.
So she's asking, is it necessary that she splits them out?
I would say that, I haven't seen the logic for what credentials they're requiring for the special education case manager. But, if that is part of her assignment and she does special education case management, you should. But to be very honest, the reason that we added that code was specifically when you had special education staff at the districts that did nothing but evaluate IEPs, right? They were just doing special education case management. They weren't in the classroom. They weren't providing resource instruction or primary instruction to students with disabilities. So that's the reason that we added it. Now, if you have an RSP teacher or a special day class teacher that in addition manages the students in their classroom, I would say it's not necessary.
Okay. Unless my chat window has frozen, I don't see any more questions. Oh, here we go. Just in time. Question 1 from Dana. Will there be live webinars for Fall 2 through the Bridge website soon? I do not see any on the training calendar yet. Or should I go back through Fall 2 YouTube videos from last year?
We're going to post the schedule soon, but because the quarterly got bumped out, we were scheduling some of the training next week, and now we can't because of the quarterly. So we got to rearrange our schedule for next week, but we're ready to start training. Stish guys got a lot going on with Wednesday and Thursday and the quarterlies, so we'll get it out there soon, hopefully this week.
Question from Cami. Could you post a link to any recording showing the uncertify process? We are working through the sped errors and want to be able to uncertify and recertify the same day as soon as we know the fatals are clear. Do we have a video of that?
Yep, we have two. One is like 5 minutes and another one's like 30 minutes.
Are you talking about toggling between revisions, Martha? Or is there one specifically about uncertifying and recertifying?
I think Nate has one video that is like 30 minutes long, just going over all of the specifics of that. And then the 5-minute one was just about where do you go to toggle between revised uncertified and the one that's approved.
Is that what you posted, Kyron?
Yeah.
The long version?
I've posted the playlist, both the long and the short version is on the playlist.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, question one from Shelley. What was the code that Brandy just mentioned for a SPED district coordinator? I think she said 6029. I'm not sure.
So it's not a district coordinator, it's a special education case manager. That's what it is. And I think it's 6029, but look at the code sets, folks. It's like we have 3 new ones. 6028, I think, is TOSA. So it's either 68, 6028, 6029, or 6030. Yes. Thank you, Laura. Okay. So the 6029 is special education case manager, non-instructional, which means that part of their assignment, they're not instructing students. They're just managing IEPs. And this is generally done by a teacher, but I cannot remember in the valid code combos if it's applicable to all job classifications. I think it's the teacher job class and maybe the admin job class, but I'm not sure. Let's see, we'll find out.
If we're looking at that now.
That non-class, yeah, that non-classroom based assignment job class tab. There we go. And go to 6029. Yeah, it looks like it's good for administrators or teachers. So.
And then while we're there, Rocio's asking about assignment code for a special ed district coordinator. Is there a code for that, or is that the case manager?
Yeah, so that is definitely not the case manager.
Okay.
So a district coordinator, generally any sort of district level program coordinator, including special education, needs a program coordinator code. So there's, let's see, program coordinator. So there's one for school site level, and then there's one for administrator program coordinator. So you'd use 0161 for special education district coordinators.
Okay. And then back up to Karina's question 1, which is linked to Sylvia's question. Joe said to use exit code 84 in addition to exit code 70. I think he misspoke or I heard wrong. How can we use 2 exit codes? Cert 135 has been haunting me for years. We exit our IFSPs with 70 unless no consent to Part B, then we exit with an 84. All that were exited with the code 70 received the Cert 135 warning.
Could be Cert 135 is not working correctly too. There's that option.
And so is 70 not eligible, Joe?
Yeah, no longer eligible.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So when you exit them with the 70, just keep in mind that when a student turns 3, they're no longer eligible for Part B, which is why you're using that code 70. Now, in that case, when you use that code, it's actually logical that CALPADS would expect a Part B evaluation. And so we actually were having a discussion with Brian Marcantel from Cyrus, who actually asked this question. He said, well, if if we use code 70, how does CALPADS know in some cases where the IEP team determines that they are no longer going to be on an IEP? How does CALPADS know that not eligible code should not expect Part B evaluation and not trigger Cert 135? And in this case, it is going to trigger, because I think that was intentional. I don't think the logic actually includes code 70, Joe. I think it only includes code 84.
Right. And that's what we're going to be discussing about, is to expand that 84 definition, right? And right now, as we previously mentioned, I think 84 would be suitable for that scenario where, like, when the student is no longer, eligible for an IEP, then the 80 would actually be more of a more specific code for that, appropriate code.
And I think what we had asked Brian was to find out, and since this is your specific scenario, what we want to know is what are the instances and the specific situations in which an IEP team can say, hey, we don't even need to evaluate this kid for Part B, right? Because is it always necessary to at least evaluate them to determine whether or not they're eligible? So what is the exact scenario in which the IEP team would say, no, this kid does not need to be on an IEP? And as Joe said, what we may have to do is augment the definition of code 84 to include instances where the parent and the IEP team has determined that evaluation is not necessary. So we may have to augment that. But, if you use 70, you're always going to get 135. 84 essentially means you're not even going to conduct a Part B initial.
Okay. 329, Rebecca from Fresno COE says, in the spirit of sharing and caring, here's a one-stop shop with staff data codes. And there's a link there. And since we're not getting too many questions, I'm going to go ahead with Terry's question too. I have a few students who were directly certified for our nutrition services department, student qualified as of 10/3/22 through students qualified as of 10/3/22 through 12/1, and then again 12/2/22. Is there a reason why they are not counted as DC on the 1.18? I haven't compared it to the aggregate report yet. Sorry, my microphone doesn't work.
So Terry, we would definitely need the student's SSID, because even though your nutrition services department says they're directly certified, remember that students can be directly certified via multiple ways. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is the state level match is one thing. Okay, and so if they were in the state level match with those dates, then they would automatically be counted on report 1.18. Okay, if they were locally directly certified, meaning through a local level match, or they were locally directly certified because they're foster homeless migrant, then those records look like 181 and 182 records, or specifically 181 records. Also sibling extensions, right? A sibling extension. So one sibling comes in the state level match, the other sibling is not on that match, but your nutrition services can directly certify them through a sibling extension. And so they may not show up as directly certified, because that column on 1.18 only, and 1.17 only reflects students who were in the state level direct certification match. So you'd have to find out how they were directly certified.
I think the other thing I would check too, Terry, is their age. Make sure that they were 5 before February.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, question 1 from Michelle. In Flash 244, it says the CERT 132 at the time of the flash, 11/30/22, had a known defect that would be fixed prior to its return to a fatal error. Excuse me. I looked in the known issues to verify it was fixed, and CERT 132 does not show up at all in the known issues. Was it fixed? I believe it was.
It was fixed, yeah. And then the fixed implemented items only stay on for 2 weeks, and that one was fixed more than 2 weeks ago, so it's gone now.
Andrew's question 1, I have a student who has sped and got a certificate in 2019. They returned for services in 2021. How should I enter and code them?
So I think there's a FAQ on this, but what matters here, Andrew, is whether or not the student is returning to continue pursuit towards a high school diploma. That's what matters. Okay. So first thing is the student should be enrolled with a primary enrollment in either scenario that I'm about to tell you, right? So you enroll them with a primary enrollment status of 10, and then they should be enrolled in grade 12. Okay. Now, if they are only there for transition services, then you need to make sure in their student enrollment record that the adult age students with disabilities in transition indicator is set to yes. Okay, so if they're only there for transition services. If they are in pursuit of a high school diploma, then that field is no. They would also need a SPED record sent up because they're still on an active IEP.
Okay. 331, Kyron posted a link to reporting SPED non-classroom assignment codes guidance with an example. Marina says, even if the IEP eval was held prior to the 3rd birthday, we still get the CERT 135.
The defect on CERT 135, 6197, I think. So I don't know if that pertains to what you're experiencing, Karina. It's way old, 6197.
Okay. Oh, Andrew put his question again with a Q1 in front of it, so we got you there. Karina, question 2. Upon completion of the IFSP, what exit code is recommended? Code 70 states, or successful completion of IEP, IFSP, or ISP. So that is what we've been using.
So Karina and Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 70, once a student completes their IFSP and they age out, meaning they've turned 3 years old, then they are no longer eligible under Part C. Okay, so 70 is appropriate. The issue that we were talking about earlier is when there will be no subsequent Part B initial. Okay, so there are a couple of scenarios for that. Either there's a withdrawal, parent withdrawal done, and they've exited special education. The second is when the parent does not consent for Part C to Part B. They don't consent for that Part B evaluation. Okay, and in that case, the parent is basically saying, I don't want them initially evaluated. So CALPADS does not expect Part B initial record. Okay, but with 70 is the code that we expect anytime that student finishes their Part B plan. And so if you use 70, again, we're going to expect that there is a Part B initial that is subsequently submitted. If a Part B initial will not be subsequently submitted, and the IEP team has either decided that one doesn't need to be conducted, or the parent has not consented, then use 84.
That is correct, Randy. That is consistent with our guidance.
Okay.
Okay, at 3:38, both Paul and Angela posted FAQ for transitional services. Christy asked question 1 for IFSPs. That is what the direction was previously, at least. At the end of the IFSP, if the student no longer qualifies or will not be evaluated for an IEP, the student is exited with a 70. If the parent does not consent for an IEP, then exit the student with an 84.
Yeah, so Christy, Brian brought this up at the last vendor meeting, and we had a subsequent discussion with him. And so again, what we're going to do is augment the definition of code 84 to include those scenarios when the IEP team has made a decision that a Part B initial is not necessary and the student will not continue.
Leilani, question 2, is it correct that a leave reason of 140 should only be used if you have completed the SARB process? If we have not completed the process, but do not know where the student has gone, should we use the 400 exit code?
Well, 400 can only be used for students that are not eligible or not subject to compulsory ed law. So you can only use it for like kindergarten students and students over 18. So you would have to use E140 as long as you have conducted. Okay, so Leilani, the bottom line is that in some cases, you can't SARB the student because they're not known to reside within your district, right? You can only refer a student to SARB if you actually know their whereabouts. If you cannot locate the student and they're still truant, then you can still use E140. As long as, here's what I wanted to say, as long as a comprehensive investigation has been conducted. Like you have to do that due diligence. The attendant staff, have to do a comprehensive investigation, which includes calling them, doing social media searches, sometimes home visits, things like that to ensure that, the student is actually cannot be found. And when that investigation has been completed, you can use E140.
Okay, question 1 from Leandra. We have a CERT 132 showing up for a student that has a 2-year gap in CALPADS, the 2019-2020 school year to the 2022-23 school year. The district before us did not code as sped, and the student has no sped activity since 2019 meeting. What do we need to do to clear this?
We probably need to see the SSID. You send up a ticket because we'd have to look at the student. You shouldn't be getting a CERT 132 if they don't have any sped records.
Question 1 from Fabiola. How do we report an assistant superintendent without a seed? You can't report them if they don't have a seed number.
I believe we have an FAQ on that one as well.
Okay. Question 2 from Dana. For fall 2, is there any difference in how to report a teacher and potentially their sub on leave if they are paid versus unpaid leave? I don't know that paid versus unpaid, how that comes into it.
I don't think it's even a factor.
Yeah.
It's if that teacher is still legally assigned to that course and they're the teacher of record, then you're going to report the teacher of record even if they're on leave, regardless of whether it's paid or unpaid.
Okay, at 3:44, Rebecca posted a Flash 132 had overall good guidance for your question.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think she was saying that there was a sped record in CALPADS, Brandy, that it was just very stale, that the student moved on from that district. That next district didn't enter any sped information, and now they're on to their third district.
So essentially, if that was the last IEP that was conducted, I do know that there are some sort of repeat offenders in the state, and who shall remain nameless, that where the student actually had an IEP at that district, but that district failed to actually upload it to CALPADS. So the first thing I would do is contact the most recent district prior to yours to see whether or not the student had an IEP. You may have to get a copy of that, and you may have to ask them to upload it. If they don't do that, then you can upload the IEP. And Joe, what was our guidance? So if the other district does not upload that record, you can actually submit the record with a meeting date that is equal to your enrollment period?
Well, essentially,
Or an amendment?
so there's a written IEP that wasn't uploaded basically by one of the previous LEA, the middle LEA for that circumstance. I think,
Possibly, yeah.
yeah, possibly, right. Yeah, so the first guidance is obviously reach out, right? If that is to no avail, then you could actually adopt that IEP from the previous LEA, written IEP.
So if you adopt it, though, the meeting date will be prior to that student's enrollment.
Right. I think the meeting date still is the same, but you have to like document it internally that you are actually adopting an IEP from a previous LEA that was not uploaded because of that CERT 132 warning during the end of year period. So it's still the same meeting date.
But you can't adopt a record that's not already in there. Right? So that record would have to exist with another LEA in order to.
It would look like that you actually did the actual
Right.
IEP. That is how it would look like, but you could actually do that.
But if the student wasn't enrolled with their LEA within that academic year, that it would not let them update. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay. So within right. Within the same academic year, you mean to say? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I think you could use the meeting date that is the start of the SNR start date.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's what I'm sort of thinking. But why don't you just send in a ticket? Let us take a look at this kid, because the reason I worry about using that meeting date is because it resets the clock for the annual. And that's not actually the case here. So let's see if we can figure out an alternative.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I think it would be kind of like an adoption in a way, but it would look like actually that you actually did the actual annual for that circumstance. That's why you need to document it internally within your your SED system, obviously, to take note that you're actually adopting a written IEP for that circumstance. But again, I agree with you, Brandy, that this may be a case that we need to obviously take care of via a ticket.
Right. Because I think it's one thing if it's within the same academic year and an LEA forgot to upload it, then it's less of an issue, right? But if the last meeting for that student was actually held a couple years ago and was not enrolled with your LEA, you're not going to be able to upload the record, because it has to at least be within the same academic year, the meeting date anyway. If there's not already an existing record from an LEA where that student was enrolled at that time. So just go ahead and submit up a ticket and we'll figure it out. Put my name and Joe's name on it.
Okay, at 3:44, Angela posted the FAQ for the seed question for the administrators. And at 3:45, Rebecca posted the Flash 132 PDF. 3:45, Alex, the real man request, Young, posted that she was going to save the document for Aaron, and Aaron says, thank you. Oh, here we go. Here's another question. Question 2 from Asha. How can we tell what districts made the list of 100 LEAs that do not need any fall 1 changes? Did we put that out there?
No, but CELPAs have the ability to look at the LEAs in their CELPA and know if the revision is dated prior to November 30th versus dated after December 20th. And I can share my screen real quick to show that. So a CELPA, and I chose Fresno, so I hope that's okay, Dominic, but under Fresno County CELPA, here's all of their LEAs, and right here, the revision date column shows when that revision was created. So anybody that had, between November 30th and December 20th, these are all obsolete, and they need to disapprove and work on a more current revision. So Asha, I think you're just an LEA, and so you want to know, I mean, any LEA can look to see what's the date of their revision. That's what it comes down to. What was the creation date of your revision? And if it was in between November 30th and December 20th, you got to have a new one, a more recent one in January. So hope that helps.
Okay. Question one from Nancy. Is CDE still planning to capture both parent guardians' highest parent ed level next year in the 2023-24 year?
So yes, that's the plan. We also will be talking about this at the quarterly meeting. So there's a couple of things that you should be aware of for parents in CALPADS for next year. So the first thing is, yes, we're planning on capturing highest education level for both parent guardians in CALPADS at the beginning of the year. And that means the logic for socioeconomically disadvantaged will change slightly. So we'll talk about that more next week. Then the second thing is we are planning to start validating your parent guardian names. Okay, so this is really important. You need to make sure that if you have parent guardian names that are being sent over to CALPADS, because we collect 2 sets of names, if you have the first name populated for that parent, the last name has to be populated as well. Okay, so beginning fall next year, if both names are not populated, meaning both first and last for parent guardian 1 and both first and last for parent guardian 2, then it will be fatal. Okay, so what's really important is that you try to take a look at the data that's in your SIS and clean it up as much as possible. Right now, we're not validating it, but next year, and if we are, it's only a warning, but next year it will be fatal if those 2 fields for the same parent are not populated.
Okay. At 3:50, Karina made a comment. It would be super helpful if CELPAs could see which LEAs have fatals on the revisions.
Have that just yet, but I think minimally, if you just check to see if they have a revision date between November 30th and December 20th, just know that they all have to be disapproved. But you know, each LEA should be looking at that revised and certified to know if they have errors. And I may be able to work with Joe on somehow getting a list out to folks, to the CELPA, so they can see which LEAs have errors. That's a back-end kind of report, so it's not something that I have created right now, but it's something we can work on so we can help the CELPAs.
Okay. Question 2 from Alex. I have a student whose SPED meeting date was within 60 days of the initial evaluation parental consent date and is a meeting type 10 Part B initial. However, I am still receiving the SPED 426 error when trying to upload to CALPADS without a meeting delay code. Any help on how to resolve this issue? This might be one we need a ticket for to try and see what's going on.
Yeah, please include the job ID. Also, that will help us look at the data.
Becca says, Martha, but what if the LEA has no fatal errors? Do they still need to disapprove their data? I'm thinking of our small districts who only have 80 students.
We lose Martha? The storm hit her house first.
The picture's still there, but maybe she froze.
Rebecca, what I'm concerned about is we had a bug on the SPED reports that didn't get fixed until, gosh, that final week, December 13th. That bug fix went in where we were severely undercounting students with disabilities on those reports. So check those, the 16.x reports, and if they look accurate, there's no change between the revised and certified. You know, it's I guess up to your discretion, although based on what people are saying that flash that went out, I haven't read it yet. they want you to do the revised and certified anyway, but as long as the numbers match, nothing's bad's gonna happen.
Question from Christy. SPED 386. The error description says a student must be less than 4 years old to be on an 150 IFSP. This would mean that the student can be 3 years old and still be on an IFSP. I'm not sure if this was a typo, as I have not heard of an update to ages for IEPs. Thanks.
I believe that it's intentionally written that way to give a little bit of wiggle room. And Joe, I think that the reason this was because sometimes when the parent asks for an independent evaluator, and therefore the student remains on the IFSP until the independent evaluation can be conducted. In some cases, I don't know if you recall, but I think it is intentional.
Yes, that's correct. That's one of the reasons, and it's also a IFSP or IEPs could be late. That's the reason why we give a little bit of a leeway, as you know. Previously, Christy, when we had case miss, we have it historically have a small window of time to allocate or have a buffer in the sense of those kind of circumstances. But again, there could be like circumstances, as Brandy pointed out, where like the IFSP could be at the end or in the middle of when the kid is turning 3. So there are some some unusual scenarios of those kind of regard.
Okay. Ethan, I thought Martha said earlier that we do not need to decert and recert if we have a December snapshot that was certified with 0 fatal errors and 0 warnings that would later become fatal errors. But this last answer said CELPAS should not review unless there's a snapshot dated in January. Have CELPAS been told they can and should certify December snapshots if they have no fatal errors on them, or is that going to be an uphill, impossible battle?
So I think CELPAS have been getting the same communications as everybody else. Or I do not believe any specific communication was sent to CELPAS. Unless you know what different, Joe.
No, that's my understanding as well, Brandy.
Question 1 from Kelly. I'm getting a Cert 77 for a private school student who is being evaluated for an IEP on census day. She was enrolled at the district level but had no courses assigned. She was ultimately determined ineligible and her enrollment was ended. I'm looking for guidance on how to proceed with this error, but I'm not finding the correct search terms for the FAQs or a relevant flash.
Private shouldn't be at the district office. Right? Should be enrollment
Yeah.
50 with the private school.
Well, the problem is that very likely, you could submit up a private school enrollment and then submit up a SPED record that they were ineligible. I think the reason they were doing this is because we had given guidance initially that, if they're not going to be served on an ISP, then you should submit up a district level enrollment. I think that's.
Oh, she does say IEP. You're right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
I was just going to say, make sure that the enrollment is undated with an N470 if the student was ineligible, and that should take care of the Cert 77. I'm wondering if the exit was just a whenever the ineligibility was determined, but it should be an N470.
You're right, Alex. That actually will clear it, even if it's a district level enrollment. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks, Alex. And it's 4 o'clock, so we have the last question of the day from Vanessa. Oh, so another one just squeezed in. Okay, we'll get yours right at 4 o'clock, Heather. From Vanessa, we have 2 students that have Cert 132s. How can I correct them? They are not in our SACE system. There's a video and flash that talks about the 132s and how to correct those, but basically you're going to want to adopt the sped records from the previous district.
And
Now,
Christy's on from SAY. So Christy, I forget, do they need to contact your support desk if they're not a SAY sped student?
Are you asking me something? I'm sorry.
No, I was asking Christy. It's from SACE. If she, I don't, or maybe you know, Brandy. If it's like a Welligent student, do the SACE users need to contact SACE support to help adopt the other IEP?
I believe so. Yeah, and she says yes. We'll try to find the best way to resolve the error. Christy said.
Okay. Okay.
SACE support on that one.
And last question of the day from Heather DeFeedy. As a SELPA, I would be leery of approving a December snapshot, as they may have fatals that are now not showing because they were fixed after the approved snapshot. So the correction may not trigger an error, but the data may still be incorrect. Is this accurate? I'm sharing that out, like in today's CASPO call I led, to disapprove snapshots prior to December 20th. Is that accurate, or is what Ethan shared accurate?
I think Martha's having mic problems, but she shared down below. It's easier if LEAs use the January revision.
There it is.
It's gonna be hard for CESA support to help you figure that out. You know, we kind of have to go individually one by one. So it's just a little bit cleaner if you use the January revision. You don't have to decertify until you've confirmed that your newer revision looks good. So you can keep that old LEA approved one for now, and then just make sure your revised and certified looks good. And then, like we said, you can do that all on the same day, uncertify and recertify the newer one.
Okay. And Kelly said she used T180, so she's going to resubmit, and thanks to Alex. And with that, we are done for the day. That's the last question. Thanks everyone for attending. Happy New Year again, and we will see you guys next Wednesday at 3 o'clock.